panel 6 talk speaker here is going to be Adam Kalish. Did I get that right? Yeah, right on. And he's going to be talking about rethinking teams, accelerating performance through purpose. Big hand for Adam.
Oop. How do I go forward?
The big one.
Oh, thank you. There we go. The big green button, folks. Hello. There we go. You're still awake. That's good. On this very optimistic morning, I have some very uncertain news for you. You all feel it. Our world and work environments are suffering from VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. These four forces are making you and your organization stressed out and your workday chaotic. With markets and competitors in flux, you and your organization are having to respond to change in increasingly short intervals while still running your core business. Companies are becoming very reactionary and asking employees to transform their markets, their processes, and their skills in record time. The result? How many people in this room are feeling VUCA? God knows I am. I'm feeling VUCA right now. Oh, I have a couple of brave people over here, some back there. That's good. Thank you for admitting it. Now, the management consultant, Gary Hamel, said it best in this quote. We're dealing with 3 centuries of layered thinking and action, which makes it very hard to do new things in old ways. Just forcing old ideas to run faster does not address the new VUCA issues. We set ourselves up for addressing new challenges with legacy mindsets, processes, and skills. I've been consulting for over 30 years for corporations, enterprises, small consultancies, small businesses, and they essentially keep looking backward even though the world is changing. These 3 centuries of business behaviors are getting stress tested by today's market realities of speed and adaptability. VUCA is creating a wedge between leadership and workers. Now, a lot of organizations today, because they have a lot of untraditional competitors, are trying to simplify and flatten their management organization, but they still have a top-down management mindset. Managers are disconnected from the work that they're demanding in shorter periods of time with fewer workers to get things done. Downsizing and smaller workforces are creating a collective chaos. Employees unfamiliar with new practices actually slow down their tasks. The gaps are ever widening. As you can see, there are many issues that are causing more stress and less satisfaction at work. Does this sound familiar? Most teams are just groups, a loose confederation of individuals pulled together by management, told the goals and tasks, and a date when they're due. I call that the do and do model. These groups are trying their best to complete these tasks using old ways of thinking and doing. I've coached probably a couple hundred teams over my career. Some teams have been around for multiple years. Some teams had just formed. And I would say most of the teams that I actually coach are essentially groups. They're not teams yet. They don't have the culture. They don't have the shared tools. They don't have the shared processes. And these are teams that have been working together 3 to 5 years even. Now, a great team is a rare bird. They're actually quite rare. Teams are interdependent. They have clarity on who's doing what, and they can map those tasks back to the goal because the team creates their sense of purpose. This is really important. Purpose cannot be imposed on a team. So just because a company has a mission and vision statement, which many companies do, we could thank Tom Peters for that, that doesn't necessarily mean that the team has a sense of purpose. Owning their goal starts with asking the right questions about that goal and stress testing all the assumptions. This is done by connecting individual contributors who each have skills, using shared tools to do the work, using physical and digital spaces to keep the team aligned, and most importantly, they create a culture based on trust, respect, openness, courage, and empathy to create a deep rapport to overcome the forces of VUCA. Clarity comes from understanding who is responsible for the task, who is accountable if things don't work, who is consulted as a subject matter expert, and who is informed, in this case, usually your manager. So what do people want out of a team? What do they hope to get out of working on one? These are answers that I've gotten from people on teams. They should all sound familiar to you. You probably want the same things. We all want to be part of a team of talented individuals who are highly motivated and unified by a sense of purpose, their purpose, to do good work. Connection and clarity create the critical rapport that makes a team more ambitious and even audacious. Unfortunately, most employees feel disempowered by the unrealistic expectations of management or disempower themselves due to issues we have discussed so far. Tasks usually are thrust upon them. That means it's pushed to them. And then management micromanages or second guesses their work. So they're told what to do. They're considered a resource. How many people here have heard the term resource? Are you a resource? Yeah. You're like a Lego block. You sort of get popped in, and then somebody else pops you in and pops you out. Excessive meetings. Let's meet. And then all meetings are an hour because the calendaring defaults to an hour. Nobody ever changes the calendar default. So one of the things that I do when I coach teams, I have them go into Outlook or whatever tool they're using for calendaring, and I have them change the default to 15 minutes. That's the default that comes up. And if they need more time, they actually have to change the time, and they have to think about, well, what's the goal of this meeting? And there's a lot of power games and vacuums that go on. We've all seen it. We've all done it, and it's all been done to us. And then there's that wonderful badgering on status by your manager every single day. What's the status of this? What's the status of this? Can you get me a report by Friday in PowerPoint? And then you spend the whole week getting that done versus the actual work done. Where in teams, employees are much more empowered to define their own work. So there actually is this thing called teamwork. They're motivated individuals. They're self-organizing. The manager isn't telling them how to organize, the team actually organizes themselves. They actually feel ownership in the work that they're defining for themselves because they have defined their sense of purpose. And they work together daily. There is no hidden work. The work isn't hidden. It's like, where is it? No, all work is visible. They also have a cadence that's based on simplicity through purpose. They show things frequently to each other. They maintain a consistent pace indefinitely. And they reflect on how to become more effective. And done means done. This is really important, and this comes from Agile. There's attention to technical excellence. That's really important because we have skills. And working output is the only measure of progress. So just because a team gets along and they feel they have a sense of purpose, if they're actually not getting things completed, it doesn't matter that the team feels good about themselves. This is a big issue I deal with when I coach teams. So if teams actually are empowered and they do these things, they become more open, more collaborative, and share every day in order to get tasks done with a meaningful cadence and a high level of craft and impact. Now, most organizations are embracing Agile, and lean frameworks become more adaptive and nimble. How many people here have heard of Agile? Oh, God. Okay, good. All right. And then most people, when they think of Agile, or when VPs or CEOs think of Agile, they immediately think, oh, it's about fast. We have to work faster. That's the power of Agile. That's not what Agile is. So they think Agile is about speed, and speed describes only how fast an object is moving. That's simple, but that's too simplistic. Really what they need to do is they need to talk about mass. What is the talent density of the team? We're all individual contributors, right? We all come together. It's like jury duty. You know, we all come together. We know there's going to be a verdict, but how are we going to achieve that verdict? What is my talent? What is your talent? What is the total talent of the team? You have to audit it. You don't just assume what the talent is of the team. That's called the talent density. Then they define a trajectory, which means that they have to consistently get work completed to meet that goal. And that's usually done over time. And this is through a cadence. They have predictable productivity in units of time. They're usually called sprints in Agile, which are usually 2 weeks. Immature teams usually do it in 4 weeks. But you know you have to get work done by a milestone, but that milestone has to be realistic based on the cadence of the team. So this actually is what I call, it's not about speed, and I talk to corporations about this who are trying to embrace Agile and Lean. It's really about velocity. So velocity is the combination of cadence and trajectory of a mass, which is all about the team. Velocity is more complex than speed, but if it's done, it's actually much more powerful. Now, when teams share and feel a sense of purpose and a sense of community, they are motivated to increase their competence and confidence over time. I talk about this a lot with team, that they actually have competencies, they're competent at things, they have skills, they have experiences that they can leverage. And then, as they work as a team, they become more confident. So the more confident you are, the more competent you feel. The more competent you feel, the more confident you are. And that's the flywheel. And that's actually what was able to actually help with the actual velocity of the team. And that's done through iteration, sharing, actively communicating, and feeling that interdependency that I was talking about earlier with teams. So, how do we go from a group to a team? There are specific stages, and Bruce Tuckman is the one who came up with this. And this actually is forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. How many people here have heard of Bruce Tuckman or this model? Oh, well, actually that's good. Sometimes I give this thing and nobody's heard of it. Now what's really important here is that this framework for me, when I first heard about it, created the breakthrough to address how a group of individual contributors can become a team by linking values with behaviors. This is their sense of purpose, their sense of values. Okay, that's very important. It's not imposed upon them, it actually comes from them. So, what's very important is that when you actually become a team, that you actually sunrise the team. And most teams don't do this. Most groups don't do this. What is the goal? How do we audit the skills and experiences that we have? Are we competent to actually meet this goal? And usually teams have gaps, and they have to find out what those gaps are. They have to talk about what are the work preferences that they want to actually have. I'm usually a questioner. I ask lots of questions. The other person is more of an explorer. You want to find out what their work preferences are so you can actually work together effectively. Then there's this whole thing about what will I do as an individual contributor on the team, and what will we do as a team? And then they actually develop a team charter. This is something in Agile that's really important that most teams don't do. They don't develop a charter, which is how do we want to work together, and how do we know that our team is healthy and that we're actually getting the work done? That's very important, that you actually develop a team charter. Then what you want to do through storm, norm, and perform, it's all about decreasing what they call the cone of uncertainty. And it's increasing the team velocity. And that's done through stress testing the goal. Remember I said asking the right questions? You don't just take a goal carte blanche and just accept it. You actually want to ask questions. You look for challenges and opportunities, and then you prioritize those opportunities. You're essentially reframing the goal. It could be very, very subtle, or it could be very, very dramatic. Then you want to define the specific tasks in order to achieve that goal. And this is done in part through what they call RACI: who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. And then Tuckman talks about a very important period in a team where they actually try to norm. Because a lot of the stuff is actually very process-driven, but it actually has to be felt in the head and the heart. So norming is where teams can achieve a greater intimacy and a spirit of interdependency and co-cooperation. And this is where teams actually get ambitious. And this is very, very important. Individuals also can start tolerating each other's whims and fancies. This is really important. You know, you have an emotional bank account, which is what Covey used to talk about. You have an emotional bank account with people versus them always being on overdraft status, essentially. Then you actually perform, and this is really what teams are about. So, for example, you have daily stand-ups. You have concentrated work windows. It isn't meetings from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You actually have concentrated work windows, which is we're not going to get interrupted. We're going to actually do concentrated work during those periods. You learn how to work synchronously and asynchronously. So this is the whole notion about how physical and digital work together. So it's not about everybody being in the same room all the time. I hear a lot of people say, well, we have to be in the same room and see one another in order to be effective. No, you don't. You could actually be using Slack. You could be using a lot of things. And you could actually work asynchronously, but you learn how asynchronous and synchronous work together. And by doing that, you share and communicate and critique all tasks in real time. So there isn't this notion, we're going to wait until Friday to see the work, and then we're going to talk about it. You're actually doing it in real time all the way through the week. And you continually reprioritize the work and connect it to the goal. So just because you have a task list doesn't mean that task list stays the way it is all the time. It doesn't. The team is constantly reprioritizing their tasks because they're empowered to do so. The manager isn't reprioritizing the tasks. The team is reprioritizing the tasks. And then they showcase the work. They celebrate the investment of their labor, of their competence and confidence, usually on Fridays at the end of the week. Managers are there, and you actually critique the work and learn how to improve. And then after every major deliverable, a team reflects and says, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And what can we improve for our next iteration? It's very much about agile and lean. You're always trying to improve the team's performance over every single sprint. And then teams don't last forever. And so really it's about when you adjourn or sunset a team, what did we learn about the goal and ourselves as a result? That's very, very important that you actually reflect on the overall experience. And you also identify individual, team, and organizational improvements. That's very, very important because organizations should be dynamic, they should be resilient, but most corporations, most organizations don't leverage the experiences of the teams to improve the organization. Now, at IBM, I coached many, many low-performing teams who thought they were teams, as I said earlier. I did this by grounding them on establishing interpersonal relationships, which usually is not looked upon in the beginning. Why be interpersonal? You know, we should just get the work done. Helping them understand their talent density and create the right foundation to support team velocity. Does this framework sound desirable to address uncertainty I discussed earlier in terms of VUCA? Has anybody here ever experienced or actually done some of this, and has it helped? A show of hands? Yeah, a few. All right. So, how do you stop being stuck in groups and instead becoming part of a team? And I love the earlier presentations. It's about simplicity. It's about clarity. So clarity of purpose, if a team has clarity of purpose, their clarity of purpose, not what's imposed upon them, then they will have a clarity of action. You connect clarity of purpose with clarity of action. Most teams don't have a clarity of purpose, and they don't understand how their efforts are actually mapping back. What's very important is that it starts with you and not your boss. A lot of people are waiting for permission for their boss to tell them, hey, do this. You should just do it. The key is starting small and not boiling the ocean by trying to do everything at once. So this isn't like a checklist. You know, the Tuckman thing shouldn't just be a checklist, because then you're going to sit there and just feel obligated to cross off the boxes. You should only choose 2 or 3 things to do. If those work, then actually do those even more. If your group becomes a team, then you can address the larger organizational orthodoxies, which there are many, and increase the skill and chemistry gaps that retard team cohesion and performance. Just give yourself permission to start. Thank you.